How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chav Tes, Daf 29 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends. Yo, friends, what up? Yo, friends. Friends, today's an interesting daf, friends. Today's an interesting daf. It's an interesting daf. We start getting into some interesting Gemaras for the next few days. I don't know how to explain it. Just interesting Gemaras. Mitzvahs the father has to do for, parents have to do for children, children do to parents, Kibbur Va'im, all sorts of interesting things. So, we're going to start off Chav Tes Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Kol mitzvahs habein alav. So any mitzvahs, so the Gemara is going to ask, what does this refer to? But Be'etzem, we'll just explain it. I don't know. I'll explain it how I explain it, okay? How's that? So, Kol mitzvahs habein alav, that any of the mitzvahs that a father needs to do for his son, anoshim chayim v'noshim p'turis. So men have a chiyuv, women are potter. The Gemara is going to explain what those are. V'chol mitzvahs ha'av alabein, and any mitzvahs that a son needs to do for a father, echad anoshim v'echad noshim chayovin, that applies both to men and to women to do these mitzvahs. And again, the Gemara is going to explain. V'chol mitzvahs esei shezman grama. Any mitzvah is pretty famous stuff, right? Any mitzvah that is caused by time. Any mitzvah that is caused by time. Anoshim chayim v'noshim p'turis. So men are chayiv, women are p'turis. V'chol mitzvahs esei shelo azman grama. Right? So for example, I don't know, sitting in the sukkah, for example, right? That's a mitzvah that doesn't apply today, but it will apply when Sukkot comes, and it will no longer apply after Sukkot. So it's time based. So the men have a chiyuv to do that, to do these mitzvahs, and women are p'turis from doing these mitzvahs. V'chol mitzvahs esei shelo azman grama, and any mitzvahs esei that has nothing to do with time, right? For example, what's mitzvahs esei shelo azman grama? I guess separating truma, right? Is that separating truma? Yeah, why not? Right, like mitzvah of challah, for example. Reish Yisrael say seichem challah titnu truma. Sounds like a mitzvah esei shelo azman grama. So echad anoshim v'echad anoshim chayovin. So both men and women are chayovin in mitzvahs esei shelo azman grama. V'chol mitzvahs lo saisei, any mitzvahs lo saisei, bein shezman grama, bein shelo azman grama. So whether it is time bound, whether it's not time bound, echad anoshim v'echad anoshim chayovin. So that applies to men and women equally. Any mitzvahs lo saseh applies to men and women equally. Chutz mi bal takif, except for cutting off your payas of your head, the corners of your head, uval tashchis, or using a razor on your face. The uval titamei l'meisim, and for a kohen who's not allowed to become tamei l'meis, that does not apply to koheneses. Now says the Gemara, "My kol mitzvahs habein alav." What does it mean? All these mitzvahs of the son on the father. Ilim kol mitzvahs dimichai bro lemebed laabo. If we're saying that it's the mitzvahs that a son needs to do for his father, like kibbur avayim, for example, noshim p'turis. But then why would we say that women are p'turis from kibbur avayim? V'atan we learn about ish, that the pasuk says in the context of, right, it says ish imov av tiro. So when it says ish, ein li ela ish, all I know is that applies to men, to fellows. Isha minayin, how do I know that applies to fellows also? Kishu omer, when it says ish imov av tira'u, that when it says, right, tira'u, so that is referring, so that is plural, it refers, arekan shnaim, that is two, referring to men and women. So when it comes to, so if we're talking about the mitzvahs that children have for their parents, so then that would apply both to men and to women. So Amar Rav Yehuda Hachi Kamar, so it says Rav Yehuda, this is what it means. Kol mitzvahs habein hamutalos ala ab lasos livno. The mitzvahs that a father needs to do, that's upon the father to do for his son. Anoshim chayovin v'noshim pituris. So that applies to, right, so the mitzvah is on the men, the women are pituris. Tanina laha the Tanu Rabbanon, and this Mishnah is basically support for that which we learn in a brisa. Ha'av chayiv bivno, that a father is chayiv for his son, to do for his son, lemulo, for bris milah, v'lifdoso, and pidyon haben, v'lamda Torah, and to teach him the holy Torah, l'asio isha, to marry him off to a fellow, v'lamdo umanus, and to teach him a trade. Some say even to teach him to swim. So I was thinking, Rashi says, this is a joke. Rashi says, that maybe he'll go out traveling on a boat, and if he doesn't know how to, and if what does it say? It says, and the boat is going to sink. Well, he'll need to know how to swim. So I was thinking that maybe now that people don't really travel by boat, they travel by plane. So if something happens to the plane, he's going to have to know how to fly. So maybe nowadays, a father needs to teach his son how to fly. That was my joke. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, that Kol she'eino melamed b'no umanus melamdo listus, that a father who doesn't teach his son a trade, he's teaching him theft, or banditry. Listus sakadati. What do you mean he's teaching him banditry? I thought he's not teaching him anything. Ela ki'ilu melamdo listus. It's ki'ilu he's teaching him banditry, right? Meaning a father who is not setting up his son for success, a father who is not teaching his son any skills, eventually the son is going to have to make a living somehow. He's going to have to support himself. He's going to have to eat, and if he has no skills, he's be'etzem, is pretty limited in what his options are, and he may turn to banditry. So therefore, a father has an obligation to teach his son a trade so that he can make a living and not have to be a bandit. Lamulo minolim. How do we know that a father has a mitzvah to do bris milah for his son? The pasuk says, "Vayamol Avram es Yitzchak beno," that Abraham did bris milah for his son Isaac. And if his father does not do bris milah for him, so then Bezdin has a mitzvah, has a chiyuv to do bris milah for this young fellow. The pasuk says, that every fellow should have a bris milah. And even if the father is not going to do it, so then Bezdin does it. And if Bezdin doesn't do it, then he's got to do it himself. The pasuk says, that if you have a fellow without a bris milah, then it's a chiyuv kares. So if nobody else is going to do it for him, then he's got to get it done. How do I know that this is a mitzvah for the father to do for his son, not the mother to do for her son? The pasuk says, "Kasher tziva oso Elokim." It's like God commanded him, like God commanded Abraham. Oso v'lo osa. Commanded Abraham, he did not command Sarah. Ashkechon miyad l'doros minolan. Okay, so I know that Abraham was commanded to do bris milah for Isaac. How do I know that it applies to all future generations, that fathers have a chiyuv to do it for their son? So Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel stop at the Besmedrish Rabbi Shmuel Kol Makom Shneim Matzav in Elazeiris Miyadu L'Doros, that when the pasuk says tzav, right, like Kasher Tziva also Elokim. So when it says tzav, it's a lashon of zerus, of motivation, and also for this generation and for future generations. Zerus dichsev v'tzav Yoshua v'chazkeu v'amtzeu, right? It's a motivation, inspiration, energization, as the pasuk says, v'tzav Yoshua, and command Joshua v'chazkeu v'amtzeu, make him strong and mighty and excited. Miyad l'doros, now and for all generations. Tichsev, as the pasuk says, Menayom asher tziva Hashem v'halu dorosechem, from the day that asher tziva Hashem, that God, tzaved. So, and from that day for all generations. So there you have it. Tzav refers to now and for all generations. Liftoso, how do we know that a father has an obligation to do pidyon aben, to redeem his firstborn son? Right, of course, that the firstborns were saved in Egypt, and therefore they have to be redeemed. You have to redeem the firstborns from the priests after 30 days. So how do we know? So Minolan, how do we know that the father has a mitzvah to redeem his son from the priest. The pasuk says, that all of your firstborn sons you shall redeem. And if his father doesn't redeem him, so he has to redeem himself. The pasuk says, padu tifte, right? That you shall surely be redeemed. So if your father doesn't redeem you, redeem yourself. How do we know that the mother does not redeem her son? It's the mitzvah on the father to redeem his son, not on the mother to redeem her son. The pasuk says, tipode tifte, right? Meaning it says the pasuk says tifte, but you could also read it tipode. So kol mitzvah liftos es atzmo, mitzvah liftos es achem. Only somebody who there's a mitzvah for them, they themselves to redeem themselves, has a mitzvah to redeem others. And somebody who is not commanded to redeem themselves, mitzvah liftos achem, so does not have a mitzvah to be pode others. And how do we know that a woman does not have a mitzvah to redeem herself? The chsiv, as the pasuk says, tifte tipode, that only people who others are commanded to redeem them, mitzvah liftos es atzmo, is commanded to redeem themselves. But if other people do not have a mitzvah to redeem them, ein mitzvah liftos es atzmo, then they do not have a commandment to redeem themselves. And how do we know that other people don't have a mitzvah to be podeh women? The Amarka, because the pasuk says that you redeem the firstborn of your sons, your sons and not your daughters. And therefore, because only boys get redeemed and girls don't get redeemed, therefore the mother does not have a mitzvah to redeem her son, and the fathers have a mitzvah to redeem their sons. Well, if there's a son, the father has the mitzvah to redeem the son, not the mother. Tanu Rabbanan, to Rabbi Stad, who liftos, uvno liftos. So, let's say you have a fellow who is not redeemed, and now he has a son, and his son needs to be redeemed. So there's two people that need to be redeemed. Okay, who called him livno? He takes precedence. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda bino kodmo. The Rabbi Yehuda says actually the son takes precedence. Shezem mitzvaso al aviv, because for the father, really it's his father's mitzvah. V'zem mitzvahs bino alav, whereas the son, the mitzvah to redeem the son is something that he himself needs to do for his son, and therefore priority goes to his son so that he could do the mitzvah for his son. Rabbi Yirmiyah, now says Rabbi Yirmiyah, Hakol modin, that everyone agrees, everyone agrees that if all they have is 5 sellers, that's it. And 5 sellers, of course, is the price that is the amount that is given to the Kohen to redeem the son. So who called him livno? My time in mitzvah digufei adifa. That everyone agrees that if all there is 5 sellers and there's no more available, so then he gets priority because he has to do the mitzvah for himself first. Ki plige, where this machlokas is heicha diika chamish mishubadim v'chamish b'nei chorin. Interesting. Where the machlokas is where there is 5 sellers cash, and the other 5 sellers is that this father had property and he sold that property to somebody else. And the question is, can we tell the Kohen, go and collect the 5 shekels from the 5 sellers from the guy who purchased property from the father? Let's go weiter for a second. Rabbi Yehuda Savar. Rabbi Yehuda holds, Milve dichsiv b'Torah kichsuva b'shtar damya. So Rabbi Yehuda says that a milve, a loan that is written in the Torah, it's basically like it's written in a document. And therefore, when the father was born, so there was a mitzvah to redeem him, and that mitzvah is written in the Torah, and as long as he does not, and therefore there's basically, it's as though there's a document written in which it says that this father has, meaning this person who's now a father, I don't know, should we give people names? Names gets a little complicated. I'm going to try to avoid using names here. This father, right, we're talking about a father and a son. The father, when he was born, he needed to be redeemed. He never got redeemed. It's as though there's a document that says that the father needs to redeem himself for 5 sellers from a Kohen, and therefore his property, there's a lien on his property for this requirement that he has to redeem himself, and therefore he had no right to sell this property that had a lien on it to some other third party, and therefore regarding his own redemption, he could, he had an obligation to redeem himself prior, his obligation to redeem himself preceded the sale of his property to this other guy, and therefore he could say to the Kohen, look, Kohen, go collect my 5 sellers from the guy who I sold my field to, and then in terms of his son, let him redeem his son with the 5 sellers cash, right? So again, Rabbi Yehuda Savar, milva d'chsiv b'Torah, any loan that's written in the Torah, such as, meaning we're saying basically this obligation that he has to redeem himself for 5 sellers, it's as if there's a document that says that this father needs to redeem himself for 5 sellers, and therefore he had no business selling this land to somebody else when he had to redeem himself. So Bahani Chomesh, with the 5 sellers of cash, Parik Livnei, let him redeem his son, Ve'ozu Koyin, and let the Koyin then go, V'tarif le'lechomesh mishubadim, L'didei. Right, then let the Kohen go and knock on the door of the person who bought the field from the father and say, look, this father sold the field when really he had to redeem himself. I need 5 sellers from you, the buyer. Right, so therefore Rabbi Yehuda says that the 5 sellers of cash is for the son, and let the Kohen go and collect the 5 sellers for the father from the buyer of the property. V'Rabbanan Saver was the rabbis hold milva d'chsiv b'Oraisa, a loan that's written in Torah. Lav kichsuv b'shtar damya it is not as though it is written in a document, and therefore he was able to sell his field to some other party, even though he hadn't yet redeemed himself, and the field is not there's no lien on the field, right? For there's not the field is not meshubad to the 5 sellers, and therefore the kohen cannot go and knock on the door of the person who bought the field, and therefore all we have is the 5 sellers cash, ve'ilkach mitzvah de gufei adif, and therefore the priority goes to him redeeming himself with this 5 sellers cash, according to the rabbis, according to the Tanakama. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbi said, Lifto says beno v'lalos l'regel. If a fellow has 2 mitzvahs to do right now, he has a mitzvah to do pidyon aben for his son, to redeem his son from the kohen, and he also has a mitzvah of being Ola Regel. Right? It's the festival time. He has to go to Jerusalem. So what does he do? So Podez Benov Achakach Ola Regel. First he does Pidyon Aben for his son, and then he takes off to Jerusalem. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda Ola Regel Achakach Podez Beno. That no, first let him go to Jerusalem for Yontif, and then afterwards he will do Pidyon Aben. Shezo mitzvah overes, shezo mitzvah shedo overes, because being Ola Regel, going to Jerusalem for the festivals, is a mitzvah that is going to pass, right? He's got, right, there's a certain window to do it. If you miss the festival, you miss the festival. So, therefore, do that as priority, because you got to make sure to get there on time. Whereas, v'zo mitzvah she'eino averes, look, you can always do Pidyon Aben later. So, Bishlam, Rabbi Yehuda, ka'amar taima, so I understand Rabbi Yehuda, he explained his rationale. First, be Ola Regel, because that is a time, right, there's a time limit for it. So the Rabban in my time, how come the rabbis say first do Pidyon Aben? So the Amar Kok, because the pasuk Pashit says, Kol b'chor bonecha tifteh v'hadu le'yirau panai rekam. What does the pasuk say? Ufetchomer tifteh v'sev lo sifteh v'arafto Kol b'chor bonecha tifteh v'lo yirau panai rekam. There you have it. The pasuk Pashit says first do Pidyon Aben and then be Ola Regel. That is why the rabbis say that is the order. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Minayin shim hayu lo Chamisha banim chamish noshim. Okay, how do you know if a fellow had 5 sons from 5 women? Shechayiv lived those kulan, that he has to redeem all of them for 5 sellers. Tamalama, the pasuk says, Kol bechor bonecha tifteh, that you shall redeem all of your firstborn sons. Pshita, that's obvious. Peterechem talarachmana. The pasuk talks about, right, the first of the womb. So if you have 5 women and each one it's their firstborn son, so yeah, the pasuk is be'etzim saying that there would be a chiyuv for Pidyon Aben for all 5. So ma'adatema, but I may have thought neilef bechor minachla. I may have thought to say, well, it says bechor by Pidyon Aben, and it also says bechor by nachla, by inheritance. Lahalan reishis ono, afkan reishis ono. I might think that, well, when it comes to inheritance, it's his firstborn son, not the firstborn sons of his wives. And therefore, I may have thought that the same applies to Pidyon Aben, that it's only his firstborn son, Kamash Milan, that no, it is any firstborn son to a woman, and therefore, if he has 5 firstborn sons with 5 women, so he would do Pidyon Aben 5 times. Okay, now moving on. Lilamdo Torah. a father has an obligation to teach his son the Holy Torah. Minolan, how do we know this? The pasuk says, that you have to teach your sons. And if a fellow's father did not teach him Torah, he's got to teach himself Torah. The pasuk says, right? That's too small. I think it's ulamadim. Ulamadim, right? It says ulamadim osam ushmartim la'asosam. So ulamadim, you have to learn them, right? So meaning v'limaditem means that the father has to teach his son. If the father doesn't teach his son, there's still a pasuk that says ulamadim, that you shall learn them yourself. How do we know that that the mother does not have a chiyuv to teach her son Torah? The pasuk says v'limaditem ulamadim, that you could read the word v'limaditem to teach it, ulamadim, and also to learn it. Kol shemitzuvah lilmod, mitzuvah lilamed, that somebody who has a mitzvah to learn it themselves has a mitzvah to teach it. V'choshenu mitzuvah lilmod, anybody who doesn't have a mitzvah, an obligation to learn, eno mitzuvah lilamed, so then they are not commanded to teach others. V'i minolan delo michayva lemelef nafsha, and how do we know that she does not have a chiyuv to teach herself? The pasuk says, "V'limaditem ulamaditem," that to teach and to learn, kol shacher mitzvah lelamdo, mitzvah lelamed es atzmo, that somebody who other people have an obligation to teach them, so they have a mitzvah to teach others. V'chol she'enachem mitzvah lelamdo, and people and somebody who other people do not have an obligation to teach them, ein mitzvah lelamed es atzmo, so they do not need. They don't have a mitzvah to teach themselves. And how do I know that other people don't have an obligation to teach women Torah? The Amar Kaz, the pasuk says, that the limaditem, the mitzvah of teaching Torah is as b'neichem, that there's a chiyuv to teach your sons, there is not a chiyuv to teach your daughters. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, hu lilmod uvno lilmod. What if you have a father and a son? And there's only enough, right, only one of them can go learn. Right? What does Rashi say? What does Rashi say? I don't know. I thought Rashi said something. Right? Look, there's not enough money for both of them to learn. Only one of them can learn, the other one has to work. So who lilmod uvno lilmod, that if it's between him having the opportunity to learn or his son having the opportunity to learn, who called him livno, he takes precedence over his son. Rabbi Yehuda Omer im benozars umemulach v'tamudo miskaim biyado. But Rabbi Yehuda says, look, if his son, however, is motivated and salty and his learning, he's going to remember his learning, and it's going to be miskaim, it's going to, I don't know, not, I guess, fall through the cracks. B'no kodmo, right? If his son's going to be be'etzim a good, a masmid, a good student, so then his son gets priority. Ki hadar of Yaakov, brother of Acha bar Yaakov, like Rav Yaakov, the son of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Shadri avu lekamid Abai. So Rav Acha bar Yaakov sent his son Yaakov to study by the Beis Medrash of Abai. Ki also, and when Rav Yaakov came home to visit, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov noticed that his son wasn't exactly in Eloi, right? He wasn't doing amazing. He wasn't doing amazingly. So Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, "Look, Ana adifna minoch. Apparently, I'm a bigger masmid than you are. Tuv at. Why don't you stay here? The Ezel Ana. I'll go learn by Abaye. Shama Abaye dekava osi. So Abaye heard that Rav Acha bar Yaakov was coming. Right, Rav Acha bar Yaakov, I think we say about Rav Acha bar Yaakov the Muflag. Rav Acha bar Yaakov was a big gaon, a big Eloi. So Havau Mazik be Rabbanon. Now there was a certain mazik, some kind of a demon by the Beis HaMedrash, and apparently the Beis HaMedrash was out in like a field somewhere, so you had to walk to the Beis HaMedrash. So it wasn't like in the middle of the town. Right, be Rabbanon da Abai ki dichi havu aile betrain afilu b'yemamim. That even if two people would walk together towards the Beis HaMedrash, even if it was during daylight hours, havu mitzike, they would get damaged from this mazik. So Abaye hears that Rav Acha bar Yaakov is coming. He tells all the people, Lo leisiv leinish ushpiza, do not give lodging to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and that way he will be forced to sleep in the Beis HaMedrash where the demon is. Efshir, the Misrachish Nisa, maybe a miracle will happen. All Baz Ba'u Be Rabbanon. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, sure enough, he came. I guess to Pumbedisa. I don't know. He came. He came to town to the yeshiva. Nobody allowed him to stay with them. He had no choice but to sleep in the yeshiva and sleep in the Beis HaMedrash. Idmei le kitanino d'shiva reishvose, and the demon appeared to Rav Acha Bar Yaakov like a snake with 7 heads. Kol kriya dechara, and every time that Rav Acha Bar Yaakov bowed down, I imagine in the Shemona Esrei, when he was davening, I guess he was praying specifically that this demon should go away. Nosur Chad Reisha, every time he bowed down, one of the 7 heads fell down, and like that, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov defeated this terrible, terrible demon. Amru L'Machar. Now the next morning, the next day, when the people came to the Beis HaMedrash, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says to them, you guys could have killed me. What happened there? If not that a miracle would happen, I could have gotten killed. Ooh, interesting shayla. What do you think? If you have to choose between studying Torah or getting married, first study Torah and then get married. But if it's impossible without a wife, so then first get married and then study Torah. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel that the halacha is first get married and then go to study Torah. Rabbi Yochanan says punkt vakert. Rechaim b'tzavor Rav Yasuk b'Torah, he's got a millstone on his neck. How is he supposed to study Torah? And there's no machlokas, it depends. If you live in Bavel, if you live in Eretz Yisrael, right? Rav Yehuda Shmuel was in Bavel. Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. And the thing is that the students would come from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael to learn. So what Rav Yehuda Shmuel was saying, look, get married, leave your wife, go to Eretz Yisrael, study Torah, you won't have any distractions, and zeu. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, he says, but we're in Eretz Yisrael. If we get married first, then we have our wife, a family, so many obligations. How is anybody supposed to accomplish anything in their learning? So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel said in Bavel, first get married, and then go learn in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael says, no, first learn without any obligations, and then get married. Okay. Mishtabach le Rav Chizda le Rav Huna, that Rav Chizda was praising to Rav Huna b'd Rav Hamnuna. The Rav Chizda was talking up Rav Hamnuna to Rav Huna. The Adam Gadohu, he was telling Rav Huna that Rav Hamnuna is a great person. Rav Huna says, okay, Rav Chizda, when Rav Hamnuna comes to you, bring him to me. Also, when Rav Hamnuna came, Rav Huna immediately noticed that his head was not covered. It's interesting, we've seen like, this is the 3rd Gemara that I can remember recently about head coverings. Right, we learned about about Rav Kahana doing Pidyon Aben, and in terms of the head covering being valuable for him because he's Talmud Chacham. We learned. We're going to learn. I think tomorrow. About Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that don't walk 4 amos without a head covering. Over here, we're talking about that people that were married would have a minhag to cover their heads. Otherwise people wouldn't wear yarmulkes? What do you guys think? Anyways, so Rav Hamnuna didn't have this head covering. My time lo prisa sudra. So Rav Huna says to Rav Hamnuna, how come you don't have a head covering? Lo nasivna. So Rav Hamnuna says, because I'm a single man, I'm a bocher. So Rav Huna turns away from Rav Hamnuna. And Rav Huna says, I don't want to see you until you get married. Rav Huna, the timing, Rav Huna was consistent with his opinion to Omar that he says, Ben Esrim Shana V'Lonosa Isha, that if a fellow is 20 years old and has not yet gotten married, Kol Yoma Ba'avera, all of his days are in sin. Ba'avera Sakadaitech, do you really think that all of his days are in sin? Ela Ema Kol Yoma Behir Avera. Well, all of his days are thinking about sin. Even if he's not sinning, he's thinking about sin. Omer Rava says, Rava v'cheintana t'ver b'shmuel ad chov shana, until 20 years, Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzapel Adam, the Eibishter waits for a fellow. Mosa Yisa Isha, when will he get married? And when a fellow reaches 20 years old and hasn't got married, Omer Tipa Chatzmosav, the Eibishter says, may his bones swell. Wow. Omer Fchizda says, the reason why I'm better than my friends, is because I got married when I was 16 years old. And if I would have gotten married when I was 14 years old, I would have said to the Sa'in, you have no chance. Arrows in your eyes. Rav Nosson says, that as long, when your hands are on the neck of your son, meaning as long as you're in a position to be able to influence positively your son, and that is from 16 till 22, you should teach him, you should try to influence him in a proper way. Teach him Musar, teach him things that are going to help him in his life. Some say that it's from 18 years old until 24 years old. It's like Machlokas Tanoim. That give chinuch to a na'ar al pidarko in ways that will help him in his life. Right? That when you have a window to be able to influence your child in ways that will help him in his life, so then do so. One opinion is that that's from 16 until 22. Some say that it is from 18 until 24, that younger than these ages, the child can't really absorb this important information, and later than that, he won't listen. But during this window, it's important to teach this fellow advice, things that will help him throughout his life. Friends, that was the Avchavtas Masechta Kiddushin. I think it was interesting. Daf mitzvahs esei shezman grom, mitzvahs lo saseh, mitzvahs esei shalom b'zman grom, things like that. The mitzvahs that a father has an obligation to do for his son. We went into these things. Very, very interesting stuff. Tomorrow we're gonna continue on these interesting things. Yeah, very, very. Yeah, it's gonna be a few days of interesting Gemaras, I think. So, friends, peace out.